What does it mean to run? I don't mean run like running away or running to exercise. What does it mean to run? Like whenever something gets incredibly difficult, what I tend to do, what I have a habit of doing, is retreating, running. It does mean running away. It does mean sometimes retreating into my mind to get out of my body. But one of the ways I tend to work through things now is by either talking through them or writing through them. And when I write, I tend to write in a sort of interview style, sort of how there's a voice in your head, and I just bring those two voices out onto the paper, and it helps me work things out. The reason why I mentioned running is because whenever things seem to be going good in my life and I reach a point of stability, I tend to, and I can even see myself doing this, I have done it. I've been doing really good on my diet. I've been doing really good on my budgeting and my finances. I've been doing pretty decent at work. I've been working on my own personal growth, listening to audiobooks, doing those things, and everything seems to be working out good. And I know that if I do these for a long enough time frame, my life will eventually just be on an upward trajectory. I'm not saying that problems don't come around, because they do, but it's just whenever I reach a point where I have done everything I can to make my life better or improve it in a little way other than external circumstances, I seem to get to this point where I tend to mess it up for myself. Like I'll be doing really good and I'll be like, I'll put logic in my head. Like the voice in my head will say, you know what, you've been doing really good for the past 3 or 4 days. Why don't you go out and treat yourself? Go out and have some fast food. And for negative things in my life, what tends to happen is I'll do that one bad thing and then it'll just spiral downward. And then eventually I'll be like, my budget's all messed up. I haven't worked out in a couple of weeks. My eating is all kinds of messed up. I haven't been listening to audiobooks. I've been playing video games more than normal. I normally do play video games, but I sort of put those on the back burner for taking care of things. So my whole life will spin out. And I really don't know what it is that makes me want to run from a sense of stability and things are going right. Most likely this has to stem from some sort of childhood trauma I had. Oh, not most likely. It does have to stem from a childhood trauma. I believe what it has to stem from is when I was young and things were going well and everything seemed to be going right, something would happen. Either my mom or my dad would get into a fight, something would happen with my brother, some kid at school would do something, basically something from the external world would shake me. And now, as I'm older, I know that that stuff happens whether you're in a place of stability or not. But it seems like since that happens so often and I didn't know how to deal with it, nobody told me how to deal with it, and I didn't bother to learn how to deal with it, my fault. It just seemed like normal to me that that sort of thing would happen. So I suppose what I'm trying to work through here in my own mind, and I guess to whoever's listening to this, is Perhaps being in a point of stability doesn't feel normal to me because I've never actually been in a point of real stability, like real, just constant, slow improvement with no real highs or lows. And because of the fact that I've never really experienced that sort of thing before, it feels super uncomfortable to me, like on an emotional level. Because feeling uncomfortable when the logical mind thinks about it, the logical mind can really pretty much push it off. At least my logical mind can push it off. But I do believe that humans are more emotional than logical simply because of my own experience in my life. Like, I know you can control your emotions to a certain point, but you can only control them if you're in a place of safety. But if you're not in a place of safety, your emotions, unless you are incredibly disciplined, at least from what I've experienced, your emotions will take over and basically take the wheel. Mark, I think his name is Mark Manson, the guy who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That guy, he phrased it in a very good way. He said that what most people think is that there's the logical mind in the driver's seat, and then there's the emotional mind, who's basically the screaming 3-year-old in the passenger seat. And you're basically there, the logical mind, sitting there holding the steering wheel straight, trying to ignore this little 3-year-old in the passenger seat. But then he said what it actually is the 3-year-old is sitting there screaming in the driver's seat, and you're the logical mind in the passenger seat. You can't grab the wheel. You're just trying to calm and coo this emotional self to go in the direction that you want to go. And when I heard that, I was like, that is bullshit. That is so bullshit. Logical mind, I go to the work, I pay the bills, but then as I thought about it more and I worked it through, it just occurred to me that that is actually true. The emotional, instinctual mind has been around longer than the frontal lobe. Most scientists will agree that the frontal lobe is where most of the logic comes from, and that's a relatively new thing. I believe last time I checked, of course you can fact check me on this, it's only been around for like 10,000 years, and human beings have been around for about 50. So we used to be emotional creatures just driven by our instincts. So those instincts are pretty much hardwired. I think 40,000 years will hardwire anything if it's done long enough. And this is good. I mean, when you walk out at night and you have this feeling of fear or this sixth sense that somebody's watching you, that is definitely good. It can save you from a lot of bad things. Like, I know it has saved me sometimes. One time I was walking out late at night and I decided to go walking on this path where it was pitch black out. And now it's pitch black, and at that time I really didn't care too much about what happened to me. I still really don't. If I'm with somebody, though, that's when I start to really care and start to really worry, because I may not care too much what happens to me, but I care about what happens to the people around me. That has evolved a little bit more now that I've gotten older to something else. I'll go into that in a moment. But I was walking out on this path late at night, and it was pitch black, but I had walked the path so many times I knew it like the back of my hand, could close my eyes, walk it. And as I was walking, I had this feeling of just fear, like intense fear, and I felt anxious, and I was thinking, like, what's going on here? What is happening? Is something going to attack me right now? This would be interesting. Yeah, that's what I thought back then. What it actually was after, I'd say, like 10, 15 seconds, I heard something coming towards me. Like, I didn't know what it was. As I said, it was a pitch black path. And at that time, I didn't have a cell phone. Cell phones were just coming out. This is when I was younger, so, cell phones didn't have flashlights. But, so I just kept walking, and this guy just walked past me, like on my left. He just walked past. I didn't even think he looked up. I didn't really look at him too much either. But we both just passed each other. And then I was like, oh my God, how the fuck did my feelings detect that? Like, it was just so strange. But you see, it, that's just ridiculous. Like, it's happened to me before. Like, these times don't happen to me very often, but when they do, I tend to try and pay closer attention because your body tends to have better senses than your mind, your logical mind does. So if you ever feel anxious or something like that, you shouldn't just ignore it and write it off. You should acknowledge it and be like, okay, let's see if we can find the reason why we're feeling anxious. Some people just ignore it and be like, oh my God, I'm anxious right now. I should just try to hide it under a pill or something. I never really liked taking pills. I only take pills for a headache if the headache lasts for more than about an hour or two, which after about an hour or two, the headache goes away. But we'll go back to one point I did make, because I did say when I was walking, I really didn't care what happened to me, but I cared if someone was walking with somebody. Now it's kind of evolved to I do care what happens to me because Keanu Reeves said something, and it really, I thought deeply on it, and it kind of hit me really hard. He was asked, what do you think happens to us after death? And he said, I know that the people who are still here will miss us. I'm kind of getting emotional about it right now because I'm just like, that's right. I do have family. I do have friends who basically, if something were to happen to me, they would miss me. And it's in my best interest to stay safe and try to grow as a person for them. But even then, that seems kind of like a stupid reason to do it. You should do it because you want to, because you care about your own preservation. And of course, the movie Fight Club comes to mind, where he, I don't know, the main character, whatever the heck he had a gun to this guy who was working at a convenience store, and he like basically threatened him. And he asked the guy, "What are you doing with your life? Why didn't you go to school?" And he was like, "Too much work, whatever the heck he said." Basically, he gave some stupid excuse. And it seems like that's basically what I've been doing. But anyway, that's enough of my rant about me and running. It just felt like something I should talk about and work through. I did work through a little bit of it. So thank you for whoever listens to this. I do appreciate it. I decided to post my thoughts and I sit down to talk face to face with a computer and just read a script. It really doesn't do too much for me. So talking like this is much better for me. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll come out with more thoughts like this just to see if I can work things through and see if I can take you guys on a journey along with me, how my mind works. That might be kind of interesting to do. But have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.